Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 38 of Ask the CEO with Avraham Gatil. Today, I'd like to introduce a very special guest. He's the founder of cloud communication service provider Zang. Prior to Zang, he was general manager of UC Applications Group, including audio conferencing and messaging solutions for Avaya. Prior to that, he served as both CEO and Chief Technologist for Esna, which was acquired by Avaya in May of 2015. He has over 25 years of leadership experience and has been honored with the Canadian CTI Pioneer Award for his experience in the messaging and communications industry. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome Mo Nezarati. Welcome, Mo.
Hey, Avram. Great to be here with you.
Great having you. Where are you logging in from?
I'm in Toronto, Canada.
Ah, one of my favorite places. Really nice.
Yeah.
How's your day going?
Day's great. Other than the cold weather persisting through the end of May here, we've had just about enough of it up here.
I can totally relate to that. Even in New York, it's not quite there yet. One of the things we share in common is our experience at Avaya. So I'm really excited to have you today. I myself am an Avaya veteran. As you can see behind me, we've got my Avaya phone. So tell me a little bit about your experience with Avaya and what Zang is and what does it offer?
Sure. I came to the company actually 2 years ago today, I think, was the acquisition. So we're catching up just on the second anniversary of the acquisition of Esna by Avaya. And I joined the company having been at Esna for 25 years, having founded it 25 years earlier, just a year out of school at engineering at the University of Toronto. And my experiences at Avaya have been actually fairly different, I think, than what a lot of people have experienced. One is I joined as an executive running the UC applications groups that you mentioned included the messaging, conferencing portfolios, and all the clients, desktop, mobile clients for the systems. And I had a little bit of an influence in some of the items that were already in flight and shaped what became now the Avaya Equinox product under sort of my tutelage for those few months that I was there. And why was my experience different was because, well, I got a chance to actually launch a startup inside of Avaya called Zang. And we launched Zang in the winter of 2016 and formally came out with it at Enterprise Connect in March of 2016. We launched Zang with an idea of providing a cloud set of communication services to people that were on demand and really micro billable. So you pay as you go. The idea was to try to join the cloud fray of technologies offered in the communication space by giving people sort of an ability to sign on and either start building applications using rich APIs that we would offer them, or providing people with a finished set of applications that we would create for sort of common use cases, but then give them the code if they wanted to modify it and do their own things with it. When we launched Zang, we initially launched our cloud platform as a service, CPaaS, in a not very crowded market, but a market dominated by a couple of very big players, and really tried to push our way through. It's been actually a tremendous success the last 14 months that we've been doing it. Our business has grown manyfold since then, and we've doubled the business in the last 4 months specifically, so really starting to take off quite well. We have a lot of very interesting use cases and businesses, from people building applications into their enterprise workflows, or people building independent applications on mobile devices and building communications into them. So we're seeing some, interesting things. There are some very cool apps that you might download, for example, to record calls on your iPhone, and those apps are written on top of Zang. There are some social networks that enable communications between people, and all the calling that is done between those apps are done on top of Zang. And a lot of messaging is done. We have a company which we've written about a few times called Owner Listens, which enables communication between the public and the owners of business establishments, and it's all running on top of Zang for their communication framework as well. So we've had some pretty interesting systems that we've put forward. The next thing we did after we launched our communications platform as a service is we launched a couple of finished applications. The first one was Zang Spaces, which is a persistent team collaboration and meetings as a service application. So think about it as a place where you go to meet like we are today on this service, except there's a notion of persistence. So the breadcrumbs of the meeting, the notes that we share, links that I might put into a chat session, etc., those would be all persistently kept, and you can go back and look at the artifacts of that meeting and revisit them. And if you have a recurring meeting week by week, again, those artifacts, meeting notes, tasks, etc., that you assign to people can be all stored there, and you can go back and revisit them on a weekly basis. Following Zang Spaces, we launched Zang Office, which is a UC as a service platform aimed at small businesses 1 to 1,000. So you could take your Avaya phone that you have behind you there and get a number from Zang Office and connect it up and essentially use it as a one person, and then add, add more extensions into your facilities as you needed to. So again, low cost, on demand. You could, go to the website, sign up on any of these services, and get rolling within, literally a few minutes of signing up. So there isn't, there isn't anything to configure. There isn't a reseller to sort of come in and, help you, plug in your devices, etc. You can do all of that yourself, or we also offer the chance for our resellers to get engaged and customize the applications if somebody wants something more than the default sort of our factory configuration settings, and they want to do something more fancy. We have all kinds of customizable features and capabilities in the platform as well. So that's what we've been up to the last sort of 14 months. So it's been, like I said, a little different because we launched this company, and everything we do within Zang is as a service and on demand. And I think we are what I call born in the cloud set of solutions, because everything we do is centered around a set of microservices, and we do a lot of updates. I mean, you being an Avaya veteran, you might remember that Avaya's typical product life cycles are measured in months and years rather than days and weeks. And at Zang, we sometimes measure them in even hours from the time that we sort of conceptualize an idea and push it through. So it's kind of a neat space to be in.
And that's the beauty of being in a startup, that you get to deploy rapidly without being constrained by a bunch of corporate red tape.
Well, I have to give all kinds of credit to the leadership of Avaya for giving me that opportunity to actually build this startup inside of the company and allowing me to actually launch this business and doing it in the way that we're doing it. And I think it shows a lot of courage for the people at Avaya to basically break new ground and really allow us to do things very differently from the way that they've been used to doing it. The processes are very different here at Zang. Yeah, absolutely, you're right.
And one of the things I love about the product suite that you talked about, we'll spend a few minutes going in depth, but one of the things I love about this is that this continues along the Avaya way of doing things with excellence, right? For the longest time, there have been questions out there. What's Avaya's cloud offering? What's Avaya bringing to the table? We've got all these other vendors out there. But at the end of the day, Avaya once again showed the world how it can produce quality products with excellence. I mean, you have not just UC as a service, but you have the collaboration and the application platform, which is something that's a true differentiator in the marketplace.
I think so. I think, looking at it from a suite of products perspective, I think it's pretty interesting that we were able to put together this offer, literally in the last 14 months. And we have a few other products coming. So our focus is to really leverage, the cloud to deliver an as a service and on-demand set of functions. And I think that the future of collaboration and really all technology consumption is centered around the ability for people to think about something and then instantly want to try it out. And if it suits their needs and if it's to their liking, they should be able to just expand it and use more of it. And that's what we've really tried to do at Zang with the products that we've put together. And we have, obviously, Avaya is known very much for their contact center and sort of customer engagement solutions as well. And we're definitely focused on getting a customer service or customer engagement solution on demand in our platform as well, that we're working aggressively on to add. So you're going to see more solutions come from us and really round out the product portfolio. And I think the differentiator that comes, I think, from our side is we're not, being Avaya actually has, a bunch of, like you said, it has a bunch of connotations attached to it. First of all, we have an enormous customer base. And when many people said, well, how come Avaya is not jumping on the bandwagon and look at all these startups that are coming on and building, cloud products? It's very different, the considerations that you have to make when you have a very large installed base, because you have, first of all, you don't have unlimited resources in terms of engineering that you have to do. So you have a lot of existing customers that are focusing your engineering towards things that they need in the products in order to make their business work. And at the same time, you have sort of like new logos and new companies that are coming on that have certain requirements. So you have to consider how you sort of split your resources, how you split your time, and how you prioritize all the things that you're trying to do, but while balancing out the needs of your existing customers with an eye towards the future as well. And I think, by separating us from it, we sort of didn't have the legacy customer base to worry about. But now that we've been in the market and seeing the successes that we're seeing, I think what you'll start to see is the offering of Zang's products to the Avaya customer base through various different bundles as we sort of push towards that as well. So now that we've sort of getting past the incubation stage, if you will, we're now at a point where I think we can really start to push out our products and take advantage of that enormous customer base that we have. And I think they're all clamoring for the kinds of solutions that we're coming up with.
Absolutely. They're definitely asking for it out there.
Yeah. So yeah, we're very excited, and like I said, I give a lot of credit to Kevin Kennedy and Gary Barnett for their leadership and their vision of bringing a company like putting a company like Zang in within the fray of the platforms that we offer.
Absolutely. So one thing I was wondering, and a lot of people may be thinking the same thing, is Zang an independent company or is it an affiliate of Avaya?
Oh, it's a wholly owned subsidiary. So Avaya owns 100% of the assets or of the shares of Zang Inc. And I basically run and manage Zang Inc. independently.
Nice. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about the product line. So we know we have the Zang Cloud, the Zang Spaces, and the Zang Office. Can you give me an example of some of the types of customers you've worked with that have been helped out by these products?
Sure. So in terms of Zang Cloud, we have, like I said, a whole bunch of applications. I mentioned a few of them earlier in my initial sermon on the kinds of products that we're seeing. But we're actually seeing a lot of enterprise customers leverage workflow integration. If you take something as simple as IVR, you look at how calls are being routed down to an environment. Well, I think if you can decide what happens to a call before it hits your center, and you can add intelligence basically to the trunk line that the call is coming in on, you give yourself a lot more options. So if you consider the fact that today, if you get a call in to a contact center, but then the caller, let's say, is looking for a skill or language or some other thing that is not within that center, you now have to find a way to transfer them out of that center into a different center. Well, I think if you could make that decision up front by having that intelligence on your trunk lines before they hit your center, you could actually redirect them to the right place. Secondly, with mobile customers coming in, a lot of times you can alleviate the kinds of information that they're looking for by sending them a text. So by merging in your IVR with text and making them a multimedia, we have an API that lets you determine whether a call that's being made into your company is on a landline or a mobile line. So if you know that coming in, somebody dials your 800 number, and then now you can tell whether that call was made on a landline or a mobile line. You can now decide based on the information that they're asking for. I'm looking for business hours. I'm looking for directions. I'm looking for, something else, whether you want to redirect them with an SMS and give them a link to the addresses so they can just click on it and get map directions, for example, right on their mobile phone. It's a lot more convenient for a caller than to having to write it down and then, type it into the Google Maps on their devices. Or you could, for example, even refer them to a microsite or a mobile website that might have actually a better engagement for them regarding the products. If you want a list of the products, if you want to know what the return policies are or whatever, you can now send them a link that then takes them right to that page that they can read in full detail and have it as a bookmark and a reference. So, being able to actually decide that ahead of time, adding that intelligence to your trunk has been very valuable to our enterprise customers because they're offloading. It's actually a big cost saving because they're offloading all of those calls entering in their facility. So the number of lines that they actually have to carry on their systems becomes a lot less because you're only paying now for the time that the caller is on that 800 line before they hit your facility, and fractions of pennies. So it's a very, very easy way to eliminate costs and add intelligence and convenience to your callers. The other thing that we're seeing a lot of is all kinds of notification applications. Again, using the SMS as a notification or an impetus to launch a workflow. So you can consider many things like, all of us have experienced cases where we've gone into a hotel, we check in, but the room's not ready yet. Well, you leave your cell phone number to the front desk, you go to, sit in the lounge, maybe grab a drink, have lunch, whatever, and you're still waiting there, craning your neck every once in a while to the front desk to see what's going on, or do they have your room ready yet, etc. Well, you can actually automate all of this in the workflow. As soon as they get your cell phone number and put it into the property management system, the maid goes to the room, marks the room clean. As soon as the room is marked clean, the text goes out and says to them, hey, Avram, your room is ready. It's 16:04. Please come to the front desk and pick up your keys. So you can automate all of that workflow as opposed to having the front desk, remember to call you and they have a list of papers, etc. We've all picked up our cars from service, and we know that, a lot of times you're sitting in a meeting, I drop off my car 8 o'clock in the morning for an oil change, I go back to the office, I'm sitting in meetings, and my phone keeps ringing because the service advisor keeps calling. Now, you don't know whether he found a major problem with your car, that he wants your authorization, or whether he's just calling to say your oil change is done, come pick up your car. So again, you can automate this by sending out a text to the person without interrupting them. When you're sitting in a meeting, you look at your phone, you can see, okay, your car's ready, or your car needs new brakes, it's $89. Do you want to authorize that, yes or no? So all of that can be kind of automated through these systems. So I think where Zang comes in is really helping people understand where they have existing workflows and existing systems that require manual intervention, and how we can help automate it and add communications layers into it.
Really nice. So Mo, who would be an ideal client for Zang?
Well, anyone really is a potential client, but different products, I think, have different audiences, for them. So for the Zang Cloud, where we're seeing really good traction are in two fronts. One is enterprises really looking at, like I said, the kind of workflow engagement that we just described previously. But also we have a lot of independent software developers, mobile developers and others who leverage communications within their application. So like I mentioned, the example I gave you with Owner Listens, if you ever go to a restaurant, a hummus shop, and there's actually a really nice hummus shop in Mountain View that I go to, and I sent a note back to the owner. It's called Oren's Hummus in Mountain View. It's a great place. And I was sitting there, and I thought, and they had a little sign there. It said, Owner Listens, if you want to send us a note, use Owner Listens. I said, hey, they're my clients. I've just gone for dinner there. And I downloaded the app on my phone and I popped it open and I sent the owner a note and I said how much I enjoyed the dinner and etc. But it was, a conduit for me to actually communicate with the establishment. And what's interesting about that product is anytime you launch it, it'll tell you all the businesses that surround you and which one of them has been an owner. So you can now send a message to the dry cleaner and say, hey, you did a really nice job of my shirt, or you left 3 stains on it. What the heck, So you can come up with all kinds of things, but there's a way for you to now send a message to the owner of that establishment, and this company does that, and they facilitate communications as a center point of their application. So those kinds of apps, and another one, a New York company called Teltec, they've written a bunch of applications. They have an app, the new one they just launched called RoboKiller, which basically stops robocalls to your phone. Then they have another one called Tape a Call, where if you're on an iPhone or you're a journalist and you want to record conversations, you can now push this and it'll actually, mechanically, it's not that complicated. It does a conference call with Zang in the cloud, but what they do, the magic that they do is that they not only record it, but they use our APIs to transcribe those messages and give you a list, like a visual list of all of them in their application. So they really manage all of those recordings really well. So you can go back into your history and find them and search for them, etc. So they've done a beautiful job with those kinds of apps. And then another company that we have, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention their name, but they're basically like a social network within a specific vertical. And when you're trying to find other members within that community, you can search for them. So if I'm looking for someone in that profession in Boston, I can now search for the type of person in Boston, and then if I want to call them, that person doesn't have to disclose their mobile number or anything else. The system actually calls a virtual number that Zang has assigned for that person, and will proxy the call throughout. So they can maintain it, they can record those conversations, make sure everybody's professional, etc., and maintain a standard within that industry that they aspire to achieve. So we're seeing those two fronts, which is the enterprise and their workflows, as well as independent software vendors that are building applications. I think from a business development standpoint, where we'd like to go, we see a lot of opportunity in the IoT space. So if you think about IoT, there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of sensors now being pushed out into the market. So sensors, need to report events that they sense. So when they sense something, they need a conduit now to actually send those reports back and actually collate and collaborate with them. So Zang is now providing a platform for some of these IoT devices to communicate with one another or communicate with a central database to report it. We have one customer who has a pretty interesting application that they've built in the farming industry, where they give a sensor, they put a sensor on cows, and they basically measure the temperature and the health of the cows. When you have a herd of 100,000 cows, I mean, you can't stick a thermometer in their mouth and see what their temperature is, right? So they use these sensors to report them. Now, in the past, what they used to do is they used to inoculate all the cows with antibiotics, because just in case you can't tell which one's sick, so you just give them all antibiotics, which then causes all kinds of health problems for you and I, who actually want to end up eating that meat, because we don't want to have all kinds of antibiotics that we're eating from the meats of the animals that were slaughtered. So this way they can actually target specifically the cows that got sick and only give the antibiotics to those, and that separates the organic ones now that have never received antibiotics from the non-organic ones that have received antibiotics. And those ones that get slaughtered that are organic, they can charge more money for, etc. So it's a win-win for everybody, and it's good for consumers and all. So I think the IoT space is very exciting for us. We're pursuing that, and obviously having not only a message delivery platform through SMS, but we have conduits for passing enormous amounts of messages through the system and sending those even through TCP sockets and others. But you need a way to actually collect massive amounts of data and a pipe to push that through. So we provide that for our customers.
That's amazing. And who would have thought that drinking a glass of milk you would benefit from a company like Avaya?
See, exactly. I think that's like I said, it's these things didn't happen by accident, and it's really the innovation that's happened over the years, and many companies that are responsible for it. And I think, I see a revolution happening in sensors and machine learning and all kinds of things, and I think it's a very exciting time to be in technology right now.
It totally is. And, talking about the IoT sensors, right, for things like manufacturing. So just like with the cows where they were over inoculating, same thing with manufacturing where they over maintain, they have these
Right.
maintenance windows and they take all these machines down and replace parts that don't have to be replaced.
Sure. Sure, absolutely. I mean, everything will get smarter and better over time. I mean, I have something like 46 IoT devices in my house. Thermostats and doorbells and locks and smoke detectors, all kinds of stuff. So you start to get inundated by the fact that a home now is no longer about me, my cell phone, and my laptop. It's like a whole network of stuff that's happening and recording. Cameras are recording and sending it up to a cloud recording device, and all kinds of stuff happening. As much as may have been in a business 10 years ago is happening out of the average home today.
Really cool. We need to hang together. I mean,
definitely.
I've got all these Avaya phones in my house, and I thought I was cool. I got to check your house out. Really nice. So, Mo, how did you get started in this career? You mentioned you started Esna right out of school. So tell me a little bit about how you started out and ended up where you are today.
I started Esna. Actually, my first job out of university, I was hired by a joint venture of General Motors and Suzuki in the auto industry in a town just outside of Toronto. And I worked there for about a year, just under a year. And I really learned a lot. We was a brand new factory we were bringing up, and when I joined, I was employee number 62, and when I left, there were almost 2,000 employees. So really was rapidly expanding, and I was one of the young engineers hired to bring up the systems and help bring up, define the processes, etc. But I really enjoyed the startup phase of it, but once it started to get going, and it sort of got a little bit more mundane, I wasn't really enjoying it as much. And I think when I looked at my career path there, it didn't really excite me at the time to be at General Motors or this company for 25 years and 25 years later, achieve a sort of middle management type of position within that organization. It wasn't really what I had aspired to do at that time when I was 23 years old. So I had heard about voicemail. I was starting to come in, and PC-based voicemail was coming, and we're talking like the late 80s now. I knew nothing about the business, and I basically started the company with a friend of mine from university, and we started the business together and launched Esna. My friend left a couple of years later. He didn't have the stomach at the time for the startup and the no money and the white knuckle periods we were going through. But he subsequently became a very successful entrepreneur and built a couple of companies and sold them. And I was actually speaking with him this morning by phone. And I persevered and continued. And my brother joined the company a few years later. And then we hired our first salesperson, David Petromala, who then became the EVP of sales at the company. And then really the three of us were responsible for the success and the growth of the company. And I focused more on the product and the technology side and building the stuff. And I coded the first, 6 versions of the product in the first 10 years. I was the main programmer in the company. And then when we started to generate cash, I realized there were a lot smarter people than me in order to code. So I was smart enough to hire the smarter people, and the products really took off at that time. So I've been very fortunate in being able to surround myself with the talent that we've had here, and happy that most of the people that we've had in the organization have been with us for many, many years. When we did the acquisition, we had so many people that were here between 10 and 15 years, and we're in a 20-odd-year-old company that was just really, it got to its heft 15 years before, but we have so many people that were here for 15 years or more, and we've had very little attrition in the 2 years since acquisition as well. So it's been just about all the engineering team, support team, everybody else has been sort of the major players in the company have all been here. We just lost a couple of salespeople, but that's about it. Everybody else is still here. So that again is a testament to the team, the quality that we've had here, and I've been very fortunate that they've been with me for all this time.
Absolutely. And, it reminds me of a statement that Simon Sinek is very famous for saying, and that's start with the why. And it sounds like you had a really great why that was the central point of your business operation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we started off trying to solve a problem for businesses, acquiring, auto attendant voicemail, and we expanded from there and went into all kinds of other areas. And when we got acquired, really our focus was integrating, communication systems that were premise-based with cloud-based applications like Google, Salesforce, Microsoft, Office 365, and others. And we'd become very, very good at integrating all these different systems. I think, with any business that you might have a good idea, but markets shift. You can't tell BlackBerry that they had they didn't have a great product in the early 2000s, but when the market shifted and they didn't react to it, it hurt them. So the trick is to always be able to deviate and sort of steer the ship in the right direction when the tides change. I tell people launching a business is like putting a boat on water. You sort of have an idea, you think you want it to go somewhere, and you say, okay, you point it in the direction you think you want it to go, but you have no idea where the winds come from. So based on where the winds come from, which is where the customers, the sales, that direction, really, it'll pull your business in a different direction. And that's what I've experienced anyway, is, you sort of have to be open to that change. You can't be so firm on the direction that your business is going that you can't shift yourself.
That's a great analogy. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So Mo, as you were building your business, what were some of the challenges, some of the ups and downs you experienced along the way? I know you mentioned the white knuckle period.
Well, I mean, look, we had a bunch of transitions. When we first launched our products, getting in a competitive voicemail market in the mid 90s, trying to sort of survive from the noise of all the other competitors, and you can't just compete solely on price. So identifying where you can make a difference and constantly shifting your business model. So we went on an OEM path in the mid 90s, and that proved very successful for us for 10 odd years. That sustained our business, and we OEM'd our products to many manufacturers. At one point in one of the big trade shows, CTI expos that were being held in the late 90s and the early 2000s in LA. I remember we were in 5 or 6 different booths within the CTI Expo. Our products were there, and our people were between all of them, and I was walking between all of these guys and supporting them. So it was great to see our product in half a dozen different booths of major manufacturers within the organization. And so that was sort of one thing as the challenges that when you face that you can't kind of grow the business on your own, figuring out how you can partner with others and being happy with a smaller piece of the pie, but basically making a bigger pie. So that the smaller piece still satisfied you, if you will. And then, when 2001 hit, I mean, we had a tremendous 99, 2000, just like everybody else in this space, where we got so much refresh in the business. And then, the market changed again, and we had to kind of reinvent ourselves into more of a software company, into more of integration with Microsoft Exchange and the sort of the unified messaging phase of I would say, of our business. And that was also, we shifted well, and again, signed up some new OEMs. One of the best ones we signed up with Mitel back in 2002, and they sold our product for many, many years. And that proved to be pretty successful. And then again, 2007 hits, and Microsoft says we're making unified messaging as part of Exchange for free, and you don't need to buy it from anybody else anymore. And that kind of shifted the market again. And then right away we reacted by attaching ourselves to the cloud. We didn't cry over the old business. We just moved on. And I think that's the key. I think is with people is look, markets change. You can't be so in love with what you created last year to not think about what you need to build next year.
And that's a great point. That's like what Gary Vaynerchuk always talks about. Don't be romantic about how you do business. If the market changes, just adapt to it and move on.
Yeah.
Really nice. Mo, what keeps you motivated every day?
I love technology. I think what I love is the proliferation of the technology pieces that I'm involved in being consumed by people. I mean, nothing excites me more than to see something that I've had a role in building, creating, pushing, architecting, whatever, actually get traction and success in the market. I mean, that's, I think, the biggest thrill I ever get. When I walk into a company and I see, our product being used there and people are happy with it or something else, I think that's, that's a thrill.
Really nice. So Mo, there's this statistic that a good portion of small businesses will fail during their first year in business. Where do you think entrepreneurs go wrong, and what advice would you have for them?
I think you've got to manage your cash. We took no money, almost no money for the 25 years we were in business. We didn't have, when we sold, we didn't have any VC fund or anybody else on the outside coming in. So we had, some friends and family that had put some money in when we needed some. But other than that, we were able to sustain our business by cash flow, especially in the early years as we were building the business. So I think the key is, even when you raise capital, don't fall in love with your business plan. Everything takes twice as long and it's twice as hard as you think it's going to be. So be careful about it. Always have multiple plans, plan A, plan B, plan C, and try to, keep multiple threads in the water and keep them going as much as you can, and just persevere. I mean, I think my general impression is, if you don't quit and you just push ahead, you'll achieve success. Now, it sometimes takes a while, but you might want to wait for it. You might not want to wait for it, but in the end, if you push hard enough, you'll get to where you want to go.
Sound advice. So talking about pushing forward, where do you think Zang will be going, let's say, in the next 5 years?
I don't really have a 5-year plan, to be honest with you. I more or less have a roadmap. Like I said, we're brand new, right? 14 months in the market. The ship is in the water. We're catching some winds. We're seeing where it's going to take us. So I can't really look to see whether it's going to blow us to Africa or blow us to Europe. So we're in the water right now. So I don't know how far it's going to go and in which direction. But in the next 12 months, our goal is to round out our products. We have a couple other products that we want to bring out to market. We want to integrate Zang spaces with premise-based video devices so people can sit in their boardrooms and join those meetings. So I think that's an important step we've got to take, and look at integrating into other devices like smart boards and other sensors, et cetera, and do a lot of third-party integration within that tool. And then with Zang Office, we're looking at more of a global push. Right now, we support the product in North America. We're adding, trying to get into Asia and Europe next. So those are sort of two things that we're working on. And then on the product side, I want to, like I said, do the customer engagement product that I think will be key for us to add in. So if I look at a customer, any customer, whether it's a small technology company, whether it's a doctor's office, et cetera, they'll need a UC system for their general calls and handling them, but then they might need some sort of a digital customer engagement, whether somebody goes to a doctor's website or dentist website, chats with the front desk and asks for an appointment for next Tuesday, or change an appointment or anything else, or a big company with 200 salespeople and they want to have calls coming in to them or a call center. So there's I think the customer engagement field is very interesting, and I think the fact that digital engagement now has become more of a thing rather than just voice only. So multi-channel digital engagement, I think, is a big thing. So that's what I'm focused on.
So Mo, if you could rewind the clock, let's say 12 months, would there be anything different that you do?
Um, if I could rewind the clock 12 months, I probably, the only thing I may have done differently is I may have started a little bit sooner with some of our digital marketing campaigns that we have underway now. But from a product standpoint, from a pure business standpoint, I think, we've had some good success. But, we didn't know much about most of this space. We knew something about it, but we weren't like experts. We didn't have, 5 years of selling, cloud-based products as a service in the enterprise space and others. So, you get into the market, you do your pitch, and then you hone your pitch according to the feedback that you get. So our pitch is a lot better now than it was, 12 months ago. I wish I'd had the insight that I did 12 months ago just to get going faster. But other than that, I think I'm very happy with the progress we made in the last 12 months. I mean, launching 3 products in 12 months. I mean, you were at Avaya, brand new products, not a .next version of the previous version, right? This is brand new conceptualized products that we brought out into the market, all really nicely wrapped together with a single identity engine, cloud-based, on-demand. So it's I think, very happy with the progress that we made here.
Wonderful. Mo, what do you like doing for fun?
I'm not like a golfer or anything like that. I love traveling. I love spending time with my family, my wife. We take long walks almost every day, and we try to travel extensively. I take my kids everywhere, wherever we go. Been to many continents and done many things, and we have all kinds of fun together. So yeah, that's for me, when I wind down, it's time with family, friends, and as much as I can, get a trip out there, even if it's for 3 or 4 days.
Nice. Yeah, we have that in common. I enjoy traveling as well. What was the most memorable place you ever went to?
Lots of memorable places. Actually, one of the places I loved is Taormina in Sicily. I went there in 2012 with my family. Spent 2 weeks just in Sicily, and 1 week of it was in Taormina. But boy, did we all love Taormina, and that's where I think the G7 conference is today. So all the world leaders are there today, and it reminded me of that when I was watching the news this morning. That's how much actually we enjoyed being in Italy. I've gone 4 or 5 times to Italy with my family, and we've really loved Italy. And we took a little bit of a different trip a couple of years ago to Iceland. I personally really enjoyed it. The kids weren't that thrilled. I mean, they're not, they were 17 and 13 at the time. So they didn't love the weather. Iceland is not, we came from July in Toronto where, they waited all winter for it to get hot. And then I took them to a cold place. So they didn't appreciate the weather so much. But boy, were we all fascinated by what we saw in Iceland. The food was amazing. The sights were incredible. The people were just phenomenal. So we really liked Iceland as well.
Beautiful. So Mo, we actually have a couple of questions from the audience. So we got time for questions. So the first question is from Joan Groom, who's the president of the Ridgewood Chamber of Commerce in Ridgewood, New Jersey. And Joan writes, what happens to it all when there's a big thunderstorm and it starts to rain? Where does the information go after the storm? And, I love this question because this is representative of what many of the non-technical people think about the cloud. And, what is it? Where does it go? And what does it do?
So, yeah, it's interesting because I think we may have done a little bit of a disservice to the technology by calling it cloud, because in fact it isn't up in the cloud. It's actually down on the ground in a massive warehouse that has stacks of hundreds of thousands of computers connected in with water coolant systems to cool all of those hundreds of thousands of computers. And in fact, when you see a data center, they're very, very dull and very uninteresting, but you think that all the stuff that happens inside of them is pretty phenomenal. So their information actually doesn't travel through the weather. It actually travels through your internet pipe, and your internet pipe typically isn't going, even if it's wireless, it can be transmitted through the weather. Think of an airplane that's traveling up in the clouds and they communicate back to the tower. There's still a communication link that can be established between, 2 points. I mean, look at our communication links that we established from here to the Mars rover. So there isn't a boundary from which we can, stop communicating. So when there is bad weather, it just actually really doesn't affect information anywhere. And your data is very safe, not in the cloud, but very safe on the ground in a data center. So think about cloud applications not as cloud applications, if you will, but think about them as on-demand applications. So you decide that you want to try something like Gmail. I sign up and I can instantly start sending an email a minute later. Or I want to open a Twitter account and I can tweet 5 seconds after I've opened up a Twitter account. Now, your information doesn't travel through the cloud. It actually goes underground through cables and other things, and very well protected from the weather elements.
And many times multiple data centers and multiple continents.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. Great question. Okay, question number 2 is from Peter Crowdell, CEO of Louisa Voice in Waldwick, New Jersey. And Peter writes, one size cloud-based telephony does not fit everyone. Can you share your views on where standalone traditional voice solutions still make sense for businesses and enterprises?
Yeah. Look, I think with every change in technology cycles, you never get 100% of people switching over to the new technology. And I liken that recently Nokia reintroduced their candy bar phone, which they had, 15 years ago, and then they killed because everybody thought they wanted smartphones, and then Nokia brought it back, and it was like the hottest device at like the Barcelona, mobile telephony conference, where people are like now showing off this, new old Nokia phone. So you're right. One size doesn't fit all. The way that we look at the market is we're not trying to capture 100% of the market. We're trying to do our best in satisfying the needs of those customers that are looking for on-demand solutions. Maybe they're not looking to purchase equipment any longer. They're not looking to necessarily have complexities. I remember when, my wife is a dentist, and when she opened up her first practice, we had a Nortel phone system, and I was called in twice a year to help her reprogram the time on the phones for daylight saving. So, people don't want to necessarily deal with those things. And of course, they don't have to deal with that today in today's systems that automatically adjust for daylight saving. Just an example that, there is I think, room for the evolution of technology and where our partners play a role. My advice always to partners is, I think if you consider the business of the past, which was typically that you bought a box and you represented it and you sold it to a particular person. Now, it doesn't matter what kind of box it was. It could be a phone system, it could be computers, it could be shoes. It doesn't matter what you sold. But you can see the whole retail model is changing with Amazon, with everything. In every industry, the whole retail model is changing. Tesla sells directly cars to their consumers, et cetera. So the models are shifting in every industry. So where I think people can make a difference is in understanding, like the layperson, a doctor's office can't go out and customize a system to integrate with their patient database and send out notifications for their next appointments. But a partner can understand the problems that office has and help them with those specific problems. So I think the service industry needs to upgrade their skills slightly and figure out how to become a part of that solution. And I think if they do that, they'll have a long path forward. But I do fear that the days of just basically selling a box may be coming to a close, no matter what kind of box you're selling.
I agree. It's now solutions based, and like you said before, the on demand. How much?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Mo, I know you're a busy guy. We're gonna wrap up and let you go. But just before we do, how do people connect with you?
I'm on Twitter, Nezarati, Nezarati. You can tweet me or follow me there, or follow Zang.io. I think it'd be a great way for anyone to connect back with me if you have anything to just communicate with me, it'll be a great forum for it.
That's great. We're going to put that in the show notes so people can just click on it and get right to you.
Absolutely.
So, do you have any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share with the audience?
I wish I was wise enough to part words of wisdom with anyone, but like I said, I think that we should. I've at least taken the approach of embracing change that's happened. In my business, we faced a lot of tough times in the changing waters. And when you're in business 25, 30 years, I mean, things change all the time. So don't be afraid of the change. Embrace the change, and you'll find ways to create opportunities for yourself within the changing waters. I think, like I said, it's an exciting time to be in technology. I'm very excited by it. Every time I think, okay, well, God, I wish I had thought about the internet 20 years ago. God, I wish I had thought about, a search engine 25 years, whatever. So you think that you've missed the boat in terms of, where the big opportunities are. But boy, you start seeing, new ideas and new energy and new things that are coming on board all the time. And I think with AI and machine learning, there's a whole new frontier being opened up right now, and IoT as well. I think there's plenty for people to grab onto and solve problems. Look around you and see what problems exist for people, and find a way to solve them. And you'll enjoy doing it, and you'll enjoy seeing people use your solutions. It's very, very rewarding.
Beautiful. Mo, thank you so much for spending your time and sharing your wisdom with us. I really appreciate having you today.
Okay, my pleasure. Take care.